It's an epidemic in the workplace. It affects every single generation, albeit differently.
It's one of those topics that's a little difficult to talk about, but it's important to talk about. And I'm thankful that we're starting to see more attention being paid to this than ever before.
I would so much rather be known for being the squishy, soft, fluffy HR person than the Grim Reaper.
From a business point of view, it affects productivity. It affects people's ability to work to their full potential. And that's where the rubber meets the road, because productivity equals profit.
Welcome to Primal HR. Real people, real talk, real HR. The human side of work from the people who live it every day. Here are your hosts, longtime HR leader Terry Smith and People First strategist Leslie Lulham.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Primal HR podcast. My name is Leslie, and I'm joined here by my fantastic co-host, Terry. And today we're going to be tackling mental health, something that more than half of American workers have reported feeling, especially in the workplace.
The very interesting thing about this is that it manifests in certain very specific ways that we're going to get into here in just a second. But mental health is probably one of the trickiest issues as far as how you manage it from a benefits point of view and how you even deal with it from an interpersonal and professional point of view. There's, of course, a ton of stigma around issues surrounding mental health and how it affects people, how changes in people's worlds can affect them. And so it's one of those topics that's a little difficult to talk about, but it's important to talk about. And I'm thankful that we're starting to see more attention being paid to this than ever before.
I couldn't agree more. And I think we have a very specific generation, Gen Z. I'm an elder millennial over here, and I grew up in the hustle culture. I was told, work hard, go to college, get a job, keep working, keep working, keep working. I was at one point on call for 3 weeks straight. I didn't know how to say no. I literally was a shell of a human. It was bad. I went in for my performance review where I got a 5, but I started crying because I was so tired, and my boss was like, hey, you can go work from home, step back. I did not even know this was happening. So I grew up in that culture, but we have Gen Z coming up, actually, and they have been very forward thinking in terms of holding boundaries and prioritizing mental health, which I think is not something the preceding generations thought about. It was always taboo. We don't talk about it. And now everyone has a therapist and everyone talks about it. And companies are putting into place mental health benefits with it, like EAPs being required by law.
Yes.
So, maybe we should talk about what an EAP is. I'll let you do that.
Oh, thanks. So EAP is an acronym for Employee Assistance Program. Employee assistance programs, in some form or another, have been around for several generations, actually, but much more focused on things related to sort of physical health or to physical well-being, or even, sort of structural things like legal services, to be as one example. It's only been more recently that they've started to delve more into helping people address sort of mental health, mental wellness things. I mean, probably, I'd say in the last maybe 30 years or so, that started to come about. But I go back a little further than that, and I can tell you that that's relatively new. So the fact that it's there at all is significant.
Yeah, and, I'm seeing them post, support with grief, support with burnout, all the different types of things life can throw your way, support with loneliness.
Which is becoming more and more of a challenge as we go forward. I was reading a report, and I think we have it here, a study that was put together by the Cigna Group, a very large employee benefit organization, and they studied the impact of personal loneliness on productivity and work quality. and the data is illuminating.
Yes, we see, support in work-life balance is something we have 20% versus 2% reported feeling lonely and not like they have a sense of work-life balance. Folks who do have support in model work-life balance are 10 times more likely to have high vitality than those who do not perceive that support. You shared an interesting stat with me earlier this week. 67% of, I can't remember the rest of it. I have that written down, though.
So 67% of the respondents on the survey indicated that they had experienced loneliness in one form or another consistently over a period of time. And just the fact that that number, that percentage is that high is indicative of a pretty significant challenge. And the fact that with different generations, the percentage is even higher. So Gen Z is higher. Boomers, higher. Not much, but higher, right? It's the middle group that is either not reporting it or is not experiencing it or some combination of those, as I understand the report.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. You know, I have the text right here. Younger generations, while more connected digitally, report higher levels of loneliness.
Yeah.
However, Gen X and baby boomers experience more severe mental health issues related to loneliness, including depression and anxiety.
Yes.
And when you first shared that stat with me, I was very interested to see how the digital age affects loneliness, because you're sitting behind a screen and you think you're interacting with people, but you're still by yourself on your phone or your computer or what have you. And outside of that, this is another interesting one, caregivers.
Yes.
Caregivers are rarely alone, but are often lonely. This includes parents of young children, unpaid caregivers for adults or disabled individuals, with 2/3 of these folks identifying as lonely, and caregivers under the age of 45 facing higher levels of emotional burden and stress compared to older caregivers. So it's an epidemic in the workplace. It affects every single generation, albeit differently. How does this affect the person? What are the effects on the body of loneliness? And what can HR teams do to support a lonely coworker?
Well, and that's a very interesting point, because earlier when we were talking about RTO in a previous episode, we were talking about ways in which leaders can support and effectively manage remote teams, right? And specific methods, ideas for creating team relationships, right? And these two data points intersect in my mind, right? That the manager of a group of remote folk has the opportunity to build that remote team culture and chip away at some of that feeling of loneliness. I'm going to go way back into the past for a minute, because when I think about remote teams and managers that operate them well, my grandfather was a State Farm insurance agent. He was a one-person office, and I'll never forget, he had this picture on his wall of this group of folks, guys mostly. He was one of them, and then there was a whole bunch of them in kind of an orbit around one guy whose name was Al Griswold, and it was called Gritty's Group. This is his nickname, right? And just a little thing, a picture of all of them kind of in this orbital sort of look. And it was a really intriguing moment. I didn't think of it this way at the time, but I think back on it and think this is somebody who has figured out some ways to create a sense of community. And one of them is this visual representation, right? And it was in the office. So the opportunity is around how to be effective as a remote leader in building that sense of community and creating a sense of teamwork and camaraderie and so forth that can help with some of these remote-based issues of loneliness and isolation and so forth.
Absolutely, and I think it was really pushed into light, loneliness in the workplace, by the pandemic. We were all forced to work from home. I would say in my experience, and I'd love to hear what your experience was of it, like 90% of people, maybe even 99% of people loved it. They were here for it. They want to work from home, commence burrito mode, wear pajamas, do the thing. But there was a small set of people that I noticed who were suffering. Really, they're by themselves. They're at home. They work. They can't leave the house. And there's a TV show that I really loved. I used to work in the gaming industry called Mystic Quest. Mm-hmm. And they did a pandemic episode. And in it, the CEO of the company showed up to Poppy, was the employee's name's house, and she was having a very hard time. And he just showed up at her house and like gave her a hug. And I thought that was such a meaningful, touching moment where someone showed up for their team. And how do you as HR mitigate that? When I was working remote and I was doing recruiting, I was onboarding people, and we definitely needed to talk about onboarding because you have a lot of really great ideas. But one thing I would say to the managers and to the onboarding people was, we are remote. I know you know this, but that means I can't look at you at your desk and read by your body language and your facial expressions that you're lost, that something isn't clicking, you're not gelling with people. These are all things I could look at a worker, and after working and onboarding so many people, there are certain signs where I would know I should reach out to you. So I need you managers and you onboarding employees. If you have a question or you need something, raise your hand. Say something in Slack. If you're not comfortable reaching out to your manager, come talk to me. I will make sure that you are taken care of and put in touch with somebody who can help. Because I think the worst thing in a remote company is onboarding, where they just send you a stack of paperwork and are like, go.
That's not onboarding.
That's information overloading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But outside of that, how do we build a culture of, inclusivity is the right term, but that is often associated with DEI, but of outreach and acceptance and inclusion for folks. Like what can HR do aside from a pizza party?
Well, and I think one of the things that I leaned in on a lot during the early part of the pandemic especially was encouraging employees to come up with ideas, right? And hey, look, what is something that you think would be cool to do or to try, right? And the whole point of it was involvement at the get-go. Start creating ideas, right? And accepting and encouraging ideas, because the idea that you don't encourage or that you overlook is the one that could work really, really well.
It's true. We so often assume this is what's always worked, so we're going to do X, Y, Z. And when you ask folks, you also get the buy-in.
Of
and
course.
I helped think of that. I helped plan it. I want to be there. They're going to go get all of their closest coworkers to come join. And what I found that was really interesting working in a remote environment was what people were interested in. We had some team building events virtually, of course, and it was a startup. The budget wasn't insane, so we got really creative. We had everyone send in pictures of your desk. Send them to HR, me, and then I made them into a presentation, and we all got on, and it was trivia. Guess whose desk this is? And people loved it. We did, this might be controversial for some, baby pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Send us baby pictures, because everyone's always curious is who is the person behind the screen. We had some hilarious pictures. My goodness, you have to make sure HR people check those pictures before you just share them out with people. And dress up parties, and my team loved trivia about each other, and we'd always sneak some company facts in there, like everyone gets to, come on.
A little bit
Tim's
of learning.
over there cracking up. He's like typical HR, sneaking in company history. Things like that, but I know there's more than events.
Yeah, and I think it's important to really underscore that the goal is to build community. It's not about having an event. We can do events until we're blue in the face. But building community, building a sense of connection so that people understand that they're part of something, right?
Yeah.
That's the real deal. And What we found in some cases that worked well too was if we would ask for ideas for things to do as the pandemic settled in, and then we would, this was so and so's idea. This thing that we did, this is Leslie's idea. This is Tim's idea. This is and building a sense of ownership of these activities or these practices, right? So that everybody was kind of involved, right? To your point about buy-in. And that seemed to work very, very well. It had its detractors, obviously, but it was more helpful than it wasn't.
Right. And I think when you're doing this, it's not just company-wide. Mm-hmm. I often think of what can we get the whole company to do, but team-specific things. Mm-hmm. Give your department heads a budget to help build community on their teams. I also think identifying folks who are your champions. Mm-hmm. You need someone who is perhaps an extroverted introvert or an extroverted extrovert who will go get in those Slack channels and just start talking mm-hmm. and tag people in. Or if you're on site, someone who will be in the lunchroom and talk to people and network mm-hmm. in the lunchroom and make folks feel welcome. And you can work with individuals, maybe eat like lunch with a friend at mm-hmm. work. That can be remote. You can do a coffee if you're on different coasts. We did like coffee donut lunch meetings for folks who were just starting and at lunchtime. Whatever combinations you can get to get people talking together. Regional meetups. Mm-hmm. If you have a lot of folks in one city or one state, send them all out to lunch. Right. Help people travel in. Mm-hmm. Speaking of community, at a previous company, there was some weather situations happening. Mm-hmm. And we had a pod of people all in one specific location who was impacted by this. I was not in the area, so we were at the leadership level talking about what can we do, how can we be supportive to these employees. And someone who was in the area was like, this other person just jumped in their truck and they're driving out and they're picking up coworkers to help get them out of the situation. And there mm-hmm. was like an army of Jeeps driving around to support their fellow coworkers, whether or not they were close or not. And that is community. They trusted each other. They were helping each other.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I mean, we've been talking for the last few minutes about things that sound like really squishy HR things. But the point about creating community is to chip away at that loneliness, right? We have created, both unintentionally and in some cases probably intentionally, we've created isolation in our society. We've created the means to accelerate this loneliness. And by the way, the point of the article that we've been discussing is not just that this exists, not just that it's an epidemic, which it is, but that it from a business point of view, it affects productivity. It affects people's ability to work to their full potential. And that's where the rubber meets the road, because productivity equals profit. And these things that we've been talking about, these ideas and ways that we were dealing with the pandemic and so forth, these all go towards dealing with that sense of loneliness, that sense of isolation, and that productivity loss. So when people say, oh, yeah, gee, it's another HR thing, they're getting all squishy again and, getting people together and all that stuff. Yeah, but it's about productivity. And the study in this, and I invite people to get on the Cigna website and download the survey, it's real productivity.
And I have a peanut gallery comment to add on right now. I would so much rather be known for being the squishy, soft, fluffy HR person than the Grim Reaper. So we take those as a W mm-hmm. because it's all part of the job. And you know what? I there was a point in my career where I felt a little bit self-conscious that my job was to be planning squishy, fluffy company events while we had other teams grinding away and really trying to hit metrics and quotas and releases. And I'm over here working on something that was much softer. Mm-hmm.
And was overhead, by the way.
Overhead, absolutely. Mm-hmm. HR is a cost center. Well, we can unpack that later. But
We will.
I think it's the balance of the HR. I was like, I've done a lot of hard things. I like planning the squishy soft stuff because I want my team to feel welcome, to feel included, to be healthy. We know the effects of burnout can have on physical health. The effects of loneliness, just so folks know, conditions such as cancer, cardiac arrest. These are really impactful things where if you're not helping it, you might be contributing to it. And we want a healthy, productive, highly functioning workforce. The whole thing is taking care of the whole person.
Right. Exactly. And I've heard all the pushback, right? That stuff doesn't make any sense. There's no value add to it. Read the survey. There's a direct link to productivity from loneliness or a lack of productivity from loneliness. There are direct data points that show that loneliness has an influence and an impact on some of the conditions that Leslie's describing. This is not fantasy. It's a real thing. And so, for years we've been, taking it on the chin in the HR world for being those folks. And, let's have another party and that doesn't really help. Well, it may or it may not. But I would ask, business leaders, if you're listening, it can't hurt you unless you do it poorly. And we can talk about the difference between doing it well and doing it poorly.
Mandatory fun times?
That would be on the poorly side of the equation. Next up on Primal HR, we're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about AI from what we do with it, and AI from the standpoint of how we use it for communication and how we communicate to and with our AI agents.
How do you use it? What do you use it for? And what are some pitfalls and watch outs that we all need to keep in mind as we're using it?
Stay connected with us on social. We're at Primal HR Podcast everywhere.
If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend, coworker, or someone who needs HR support.
You've been listening to Primal HR. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Join the conversation on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook at Primal HR Podcast. Show notes and more at primalhrpodcast.com. Got a topic idea or want to join us on the show? Reach out at primalhrpodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.